I post bonds for, CPS bonds is what we do. Bonding agents post a cash property surety bond. Basically meaning that, you know, if you are arrested for something, you can post cash, you can post property with the court, or you can use a surety. I take a percentage of the amount of the bond, and I get you out. I put my money up for you, in essence, okay? The issue that we're going to talk to you about is pretrial. Pretrial was originally started in the 60s. It was to, in about the mid-60s, it was to help the indigent and the poor so that they, for financial reasons, they weren't excluded from getting out of jail. They were going to be monitored by pretrial until they went to court, until they settled their case. In Larimer County especially, the scope of pretrial has gone way over the border of just monitoring the indigent. It monitors everyone. When you are arrested, let's say for a DUI, you have a bond set by pretrial. You're in the jail, pretrial interviews you, they determine according to a bond schedule what your bond should be, but they interview you, and in Larimer County everyone's put on pretrial. Nobody escapes pretrial. It's just the different varying degrees of pretrial. Pretrial varies from anything from just checking in, calling in, to doing UAs, BAs, whatever they decide they want you to do, pretty much. Show up at their office. So pretrial interviews you to see what you are as far as flight risk, or if you are flight risk. They call your family. They check, you know, they ask your family about where you work, where you live, where they work, where they live, as if that has anything to do with anything. Then they determine the bond that you're going to get, and then you're able to post your bond. They make you sign for pretrial. They tell you this is what we're going to do with you, and we'll have you sign here, and you can post your bond, and you're out the door. Well, the problem with that a lot of times is, let's say you're arrested for a DUI, then pretrial interviews you while you're still under the influence. Pretrial has you sign legal papers while you're still under the influence. And then, let's say I walk in and I'm going to post that bond for that person, they usually require an 8-hour waiver signed by family or friends, so that there's somebody there to watch them for 8 hours to make sure that they, you know, don't commit any crimes or drive anymore or whatever while still under the influence. But yet, they're allowed to sign all their pretrial papers while still under the influence. Most of the time, when I get somebody out that was DUI, it's, I don't remember signing that. What is that? What do I have to do now? And then it's my job to kind of say, well, you know, I steer them where to go. They have to check in with pretrial. Otherwise, they're violating their pretrial conditions and they're put right back in jail. And this happens even if, let's say you're charged with a DUI and the case is dismissed, or you're found not guilty. You still have been going to pretrial, and if you violate any of your pretrial conditions, if you don't show up for a UA, if you can't afford to pay for one, UA is a urinalysis, BA is a breathalyzer. So if you can't afford to, or if you should happen to fail one of those, you've got a whole new case for failure to comply with your pretrial, even though your original case of a DUI may be dismissed or you're found innocent. Okay, so you're on pretrial, you've got to take off work, you've got to check in with pretrial, you have to go in for UAs, you have to go in for BAs, all at your expense. So if you're working and you have a job and you tell your employer every day, I've got to leave, they just called me, or they called my color, I called in, it's my color, I got to go, you're taking off every day to go to pretrial. So still yet, if you're found innocent, you don't get any time back, you don't get your work back, you don't get your money back, you don't get anything back. So you're basically being monitored as if you were guilty before you've even been to court. The purpose of pretrial, well, they think pretrial is going to empty the jail. Pretrial is not emptying our jails. People are being bonded, either PRs, PRCOs, with a bonding agent. That's what's emptying the jails. Pretrial's not. They're just monitoring. They're an information gathering, and that's all they do is gather information and give it to the judges. Judges like it because it's free to them. It costs the taxpayer $1.7 million a year to run pretrial.
Is that for Colorado or for Larimer County?
Larimer County.
Oh.
Larimer County has 21 pretrial workers on staff versus Weld County has 3. And Larimer County has 21. Our sheriff likes to say that the jail is full. He capped it. It's 557 beds after the expansion that we're still paying taxes for. And he's capped it at 460. And that is because he really doesn't have the people to run the jail. He's got a whole wing that's empty, but he doesn't have any officers that are there to be able to run that wing. So, and that's a whole other issue. I don't know who wants to talk about the sheriff releasing everybody early, and but that's what's emptying our jails, not pretrial. And we're paying $1.7 million a year for pretrial. And it's pretty well known. I mean, you know, the more conditions you give somebody to follow, they're bound to screw up on one, you know, and then they're right back in jail. So the recidivism rate for pretrial, anybody on pretrial, is high. So I'm going to let Brian Brooks talk to you for a minute. I do want to also mention, though, that there is a state statute regarding people being intoxicated or under the influence of drugs when they are in, they're not even allowed to see a judge. If you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs, you are to be held in custody until you're sober before you can even see a judge. Yet on pretrial, you sign your papers, you're interviewed, you're doing everything while under the influence. So we have a real problem with them following state statute. Do you want me to remember your name?
No, I want you
it was
to
Dan,
ask me
wasn't
if I
it?
have a question.
Dawn. Okay. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Did you say that you have to go for this pre-trial conference, or whatever it's called, for any offense?
Any offense. Pretrial services interviews you, and they are on your bond. I've had a woman, or a man that was arrested for shoplifting that had to do UAs,
Really?
urinalysis. I mean, he had no alcohol charges whatsoever, but he was doing urinalysis.
Is this misdemeanor or?
Misdemeanor cases. They monitor very heavily misdemeanor cases because those are the people that are most likely going to comply anyway. So,
Sorry, I might have missed it. Now, if you refuse,
you can't refuse. You're told that you have to sign
If
for
I can interject, as a condition of your release, whether you post bond, whether you call a bonding agent to post bond, if you're given a PR bond, you sign your bond, you're eligible for release, except for one little condition, and that is to be screened with pretrial. And after your screening with pretrial, you are then required to sign a contract with pretrial services to
follow
BAs,
whatever. Yeah.
UAs, no weapons, no further charges. You're forced into signing this contract. Now, if you refuse to sign that contract, regardless of the bond that you posted, you don't get out of jail.
Release you.
You stay there until you decide to sign it.